The Mummy? What the hell is that? Oh, you mean Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Why didn't you say so? In this movie, Charlie and Larissa Cannon experience a family's worst nightmare. Their daughter Katie goes missing. 8 years later, they experience a family's even more worst nightmare when she comes back as a mummy, which it turns out is pretty much a deadite, but one that takes its time. It starts with a cold open in Egypt. A family finds their pet bird dead, something the parents take as a sign that perhaps it's time. We get an idea what that means when the parents head downstairs where they keep their black pyramid, where they keep their sarcophagus. We all had one growing up. They crack it open to have a look. Sure enough, the mummy inside jump scares them, and Dad is killed by a hook thing. Cronin is big on practical effects. Along with that, he's good at imagining scenarios worth rendering with practical effects. I love how they build this whole mechanism for opening the sarcophagus. You have to crank the wheel so 4 sharp metal hooks grab the heavy cover and pull it off. It's satisfying to watch in the way it's always satisfying to see a mechanical thing at work. And when you see those sharp hooks, you know they're going to sink into someone's flesh soon enough. What are they up to in that basement, by the way? Let's get into spoiler and ending explained territory. So it turns out there's a demon which can only be contained by putting it inside a person and mummifying them, but eventually the vessel is used up and the demon's evil seeps out. The dead bird was a sign this particular vessel is almost done. The man dying by hook is the clincher. So, time for a new vessel. That's where the Cannon family comes in. Turns out an innocent child vessel is the best kind. It lasts longer. Wouldn't you know it, they find an American family. Their dad Charlie is a reporter in Egypt, and their daughter Katie likes candy. That will be their inn. Pyramid Lady sends her daughter Layla to Katie with a bunch of candy, so the two become friends. Once the friendship is established with her daughter, Pyramid Lady introduces herself to Katie as a magician. Then kidnaps her, transfers the demon, mummifies her, and sticks her in the sarcophagus. It's like watching my own autobiography. Except instead of a sarcophagus, it was a school locker, and instead of candy, well, actually, that part was the same. That's why I barely fit in the locker. Of course, all of this is a mystery to Charlie and Larissa. All they know is that their daughter is gone. The disappearance is well done. She isn't just gone all of a sudden. Instead, it's drawn out. Charlie notices a bunch of candy wrappers in her room. Who's been giving her that candy? He runs outside and actually spots her in the arms of the magician. He chases after them, but they're lost in a sandstorm. The storm is not only visually interesting, it creates the sense that his daughter is right there, but just out of reach, slowly fading from vision. It makes it that much more tense. Also have to point out, Jack Rayner as Charlie Cannon gets this wide-eyed look on his face when he notices the candy wrappers, and that look will not leave his face for the rest of the movie. And that is not a criticism. Honestly, if someone had to deal with all this supernatural insanity in real life, I don't think it ever stopped being insane, so it felt like an appropriate choice. 8 years later, love an unexpectedly long time skip. Endgame had the 5-year skip. 2001: A Space Odyssey had the 4 million year skip. And right in between them, The Mummy with 8. A plane crashes. The 3,000-year-old sarcophagus is found in the wreckage, and inside it, Katie, alive. The Cannon family, now living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, rushes to Egypt and bring their daughter home. I'd love to see how that flight went. In addition to long time skips, I also like when something crazy happens in the background and the film doesn't immediately draw attention to it. Somehow it adds an extra sense of realism. Here, a guy is working on his bike, and in the background you just notice, That plane is going down. What was that sarcophagus doing on a plane, by the way? Later, the magician's daughter, Layla, will explain that the area was going to flood, so they had to move it. Her brothers were put to the task. They'd never moved it before, and apparently, they suck at it. There were a lot of oohs in my theater when we get up close and personal with the wreckage, because it's when you see some of Cronin at his best, portraying disgusting violence. In this case, you see an eyeball on the ground, then see where it came from, a guy with a tree branch through his face. In Albuquerque, Katie joins her younger brother Sebastian and sister Maud, who was born shortly after her disappearance. Except that there's something off about Katie. She isn't speaking, she has to be sedated all the time to stop her from hurting herself, and she looks dead. But that's probably nothing. And anyway, before long, she's back to her old self, doing all the stuff she used to love. Headbutting grandma in the face, running around the crawl space, eating scorpions, and leaving blood puddles under the carpet. Soon, Mom and Grandma decide it's time to do something about Katie's overgrown toenails. One of those nails is stubborn. Mom puts so much force on the nail cutter it flings a shard of the nail into the girl's mouth, though she doesn't seem to mind. The next nail is even tougher. This time, putting all that force on the cutter tears a strip of flesh off Katie's leg. It's like watching my autobiography. Katie runs, Charlie chases her, and finds her carving at her leg with a fire poker, like she's trying to strip off the rest of her flesh too. They rush her to the hospital. No, they don't. I guess they got this, clearly. The movie does ask you to just accept certain things. The extent to which the hospital hands her over with little to no instruction on how to care for her, the same doctors who do nothing about her overgrown and rotting nails, and I know for them it's all a mystery how she ended up in that sarcophagus, but there's so little conversation about what she might have gone through the last 8 years, not even theories. There's the 20-hour flight they must have taken her on that somehow went off without a hitch. We don't need to see every detail, but these are the sorts of details that would have helped to add a sense of realism, which would have added more dread for the inevitable chaos. Also, why did they drag her wheelchair up the stairs when they got home so it thuds with every step? Given the severe malnutrition, she must have weighed nothing. Take her out of the chair, bring her up, and then bring up the chair. Anyhow, Charlie is starting to think maybe we need to consider finding a place for Katie, even if just for a while. Larissa is disgusted. You're saying I can't take care of my own daughter? I mean, you did just tear off a chunk of her leg, cutting her toenails, is what I would say. Charlie pivots. Don't you want to know what happened to Katie while she was gone? Larissa is pissed. Why are you so stuck in the past? Stuck in the past? Our daughter was in a 3,000-year-old sarcophagus and she tried to kill your mom, is what I would say. Instead, Charlie gets somber. I know you blame me for what happened to Katie. I was there the day she went missing. But what about you, huh? Never noticed she had a secret friend in the garden? It's around here the movie starts to drag. I enjoyed the family dynamic set up at the start of the movie. They do a good job highlighting their different personalities. Dad neurotically watching himself on TV. Do I move my hands too much when I talk? Their inside joke deciding who looks more like a toad or a rat. Enough to start the process of developing full-fledged characters. But once Katie returns and everything is thrown into upheaval, the characters have nothing to do but react to her insanity. But their reactions have to be fairly muted because it's their daughter they're dealing with. They can't go Ash Williams and start chainsawing zombies, and she can't go too crazy because then they'd realize she's a mummy too soon and take more drastic action. So it gets stuck in this middling place. How to handle that? Drama, tension between characters, except none of it lands. The conversation between Charlie and Larissa is forced, especially her accusing him of being stuck in the past. And there's something there about Charlie feeling guilty, then weaponizing it against Larissa, but it wasn't a tension simmering under the surface that blows up. It's just the one conversation, and we don't really circle back to it. Despite the pacing issue this creates, Natalie Grace as Katie does a great job. Aside from putting up with 7 hours daily of prosthetic and makeup applications, she gets all the physicality so right by making it feel so wrong. The dead-eyed stare and oddly bent limbs. Cronin did accomplish the task of making mummies creepy after a century of overexposure turning them into jokes, or at best, action-adventure adversaries. That's in part thanks to the creepy aesthetic, but also the idea of making the mummy not some ancient foe, but someone close and personal, a daughter. Charlie, still stuck in the past, takes a look at that piece of skin Larissa tore off their daughter, and under it, he finds scraps of writing, some kind of Egyptian characters in multiple layers. He lays them out and brings them to a professor of archaeology for translation. Specifically, he brings them to Professor Bixler. If that name sounds familiar, that's because he shares a last name with Evil Dead Rise's main character, Beth Bixler, and that is no coincidence. Perry Nemiroff of Collider asked Cronin if he considers this Mummy movie to take place in the same world as Evil Dead, and he points out, if you pay attention to the name of the archaeology professor in the movie, it could be a distant relative of some key characters in Evil Dead Rise. The highlight of the movie is the various insanities Cronin puts on screen, and there are horrors here worth the price of admission. The time in between, unfortunately, continues to drag. The family drama doesn't land, and I don't care much for the Scooby-Dooing because there's nothing to indicate the mystery will be anything more than standard horror fare, and it's done in the standard horror way. I contacted a professor and he told me about Bagul, or insert demon name here. Thousands of years ago, he ate children, or tortured children, or kidnapped children, or insert other horrible thing here. If you totally unfairly compare this to the best of the genre, The Exorcist, which this movie clearly borrows from, The Exorcist also had a lot of investigation, but from the beginning, we knew where it was heading. Confirmation the girl is indeed possessed, but the exact details, who she was possessed by, and that demon's particular goals were superfluous. Instead, it was the dramatic impact of watching a mother go from desperate skepticism to belief and acceptance that this is not a job for doctors, it's a job for a priest. Without that dramatic weight, it's just waiting for the movie to go through the usual beats. What's the demon's name? Here's why the demon is scary, etc. Though the reveal of writing under Katie's flesh was an interesting and creative addition. That night, Charlie discovers something else. Katie has been clicking her teeth. Suddenly he realizes it isn't random. 8 years ago, Charlie was helping her learn Morse code as part of Girl Scouts. There was a scene early on where you see them practicing it, which felt very random at the time. And now that you mention it, do Girl Scouts really learn Morse code these days? Is this a stretch? It's a movie about a mummy, and that's what you're worried about? Okay, moving on. Translating the clicks reveals a name. Layla. He passes that name on to Detective Dahlia, and this crack detective has a question. Hey, I just thought of this. Did you have any friends or colleagues with the name Layla while you were living in Cairo? No? Okay. Hey, do you know anyone by that name now, or maybe from your past? If I called up the detective and these were her questions, I'd be so annoyed. Oh, you think I should try to think if I know anyone named Layla? Why didn't I think of that? But she does ask a question that jogs something in Charlie's mind. Anyone named Layla attempt to communicate with you since Katie's disappearance? Charlie thinks of the box downstairs, where they keep all the letters of support and condolence they received. Sure enough, he finds one from Layla Khalil. I'm so sad. I didn't want it to happen to Katie. She was my best friend. Remember, the lady who kidnapped Katie did it by sending her own daughter Layla to befriend her. Apparently, Layla was sad about her friend being mummified, as any true friend should be. While Charlie's in the basement, Katie sings. That gets her little sister Maud's attention. Also, when Katie sticks her tongue through the crack under the door to taste her toes, that also gets her attention. Maud tries to run. Katie makes her float. Pennywise would love this movie. Maud floats to the door, and her eyes roll into the back of her head. The next day, Charlie visits the university, where the professor has finished his translations of the words from under Katie's skin. It's about the Nazmaranian.
Tasmanian. Here it is. A strong, murderous beast. Jaws as powerful as... What's up, Dad?
Not the Tasmanian devil, the Nazmaranian demon, who relishes destroying families, turning parents against kids, kids against parents. I think I've met this demon. The wrappings under Katie's skin are words of protection to contain it. Presumably, that's why she was trying to tear off her skin. That's the demon trying to get rid of the protection spell and escape. Something it could attempt after Mom tore off that strip of flesh, inadvertently removing some of those words. That was like creaking the door open a little, then the demon could try barreling through it. Wait, what happened to Maud, by the way? The possession has now spread to her. She says some pretty mean words to her teacher, played by Lily Sullivan, who played Beth in Evil Dead Rise. The teacher is so shocked, snot comes out of her nose, and apparently that was real, a choice by the actress which surprised Cronin while filming. The The detective finds the Layla Khalil home, she finds the Black Pyramid, and when the kidnapping mom shows up and attacks, the detective shoots her. Then she meets the kidnapper's daughter, Layla. Her tongue has been removed, so Layla can hardly speak, but she provides a videotape of Katie's mummification and writes down a full explanation. If the movie was dragging before, this is where it comes to a total standstill. I just don't care about any of this. Even in terms of mystery, we already have the broad strokes of an answer from the professor. There's a demon in her. The wrappings keep it in there. Now we're just slowly waiting for Detective Dahlia to catch up to what we already know and maybe fill in a few superfluous details. There was a moment of, when Layla reveals her tongue, more Cronin patented, ooh, stuff. The kind of thing you sometimes hear about in movies. Someone can't talk because their tongue was removed, but you don't usually actually see the tongue. Charlie picks up Maud and Sebastian from school while doing his best to ignore Maud's increasingly obvious demonic possession. Remember how I said the characters have nothing to do but react to the insanity? Well, at this point, it seems like they're not even bothering to react anymore. They're kind of just trying to ignore it all. Anyway, at home, Katie's grandma prays for her, and her prayers are answered. By the demon. Her cross necklace wraps around her throat and pulls her up so she floats, hanging by the neck. Then, Katie sends her flying out the window. She lands on Charlie's car as they pull into the driveway, which Maud finds hilarious, and who can blame her? Even funnier than that, Grandma stays alive just long enough to experience the joys of being eaten to death by coyotes. At the funeral, Maud rips out her baby teeth, spits blood on the deviled eggs, and borrows her deceased grandmother's dentures, which she uses to bite the preacher, while Katie rips through the ceiling, jumps into the open casket to bite open Grandma's throat and suck up the embalming fluid, which she licks off the floor once the struggle with Mom knocks the casket over. The number of times I've written that sentence in my life. I have mixed feelings on this scene. On the one hand, it's so insane and over the top, my theater was laughing. Starting with the deviled eggs, then the dentures, and they do the plane crash in the background trick again, except this time, instead of a plane crash, it's Katie falling through the ceiling into the casket. It's doubly hilarious because at this point, given the possession of Maud that is going totally ignored, the crazier things get while this family does nothing but stare with wide eyes, the more you throw up your hands like, is anybody paying attention to anything? So on the one hand, it is a fun scene. On the other hand, it becomes basically impossible to take the movie seriously, which wouldn't be a problem except that the movie often is trying to take itself seriously. That night, they tie Katie up in her room while Charlie watches her with a sedative shot at the ready, while in the other room, Sebastian repeatedly bangs his head against the bedpost until he bleeds. This is the part where someone in my theater yelled out, "Is anybody going to keep an eye on these kids?" And you'd think by now they would have a closer eye on Sebastian, in case the evil spreads to him like it clearly did Maud. But maybe they don't like Sebastian very much, so they stick him in the room next to Katie's, and they're like, "Boy, I sure do hope no demon or phantasms possess our son tonight. Yep, sure would be a shame." "Dad, who are you talking to?" "Huh? Nothing. Go back to sleep." "Shh. Yes, asleep and vulnerable." "Huh? Nothing. Shut up." I do get what they're going for. It's just too much to handle for the family. They were just dealing with a funeral, and Katie takes their focus away from the other kids. But it went too far for me and didn't really mind any dramatic tension out of it. I think the movie would have worked better if it focused only on the insanity, stuck with the more comedic elements, dropped the pretense of drama and themes. They touch a few times on the idea of missing people and how infrequently they actually turn up alive. But how much does it really have to say about that? At least the family has finally decided to make a move. Mom is packing bags so they can leave the house and presumably leave Katie to some kind of professional, or take the Dr. Hibbert approach.
Fire, and lots of it.
Oh, that's your cure for everything.
Charlie watches Katie's wheelchair float up and crash down to the floor a few times, something he keeps to himself when the detective arrives. She shows them the tape where Layla's mom talks to the camera. Their family has been keeping the Nazmaranian at bay by repeating this mummification ritual dozens of times throughout the generations. This tape is meant to document the ritual, so when the time comes to transfer the demon again to a fresh host, her grandchildren will know how. Speaking of host, an innocent child works best. The body lasts longer, but any human life will do. In case you didn't get all that the first two times the movie explained it to us. The tape shows in detail the process of taking the kidnapped Katie, restraining her above the old, used-up mummy, and letting the demon pass from one to the other in the form of vomiting a torrent of black fluid into her mouth. Upstairs, the possession spreads to Sebastian, and Katie recruits her brother to help tear off the rest of her skin, and with it, those protective words. Now her power is unleashed and all hell breaks loose. Katie floats, invites in a sandstorm, and reanimates Grandma to fight alongside her. Sebastian fights too. So it becomes mother versus son, father versus daughter, and detective versus undead grandmother. And undead Grandma has a scorpion in her mouth, which she promptly spits into the detective's mouth. You really can find anything on the internet these days. She does manage to pull it out of her throat, but not before it pokes a hole in that throat. It all comes to an end thanks to sacrifice. They saw the ritual on that tape. They know how it's done, and they know that any human life will do. Charlie connects the dots. Wait a second, I'm human. He invites the demon to leave his daughter and take him instead. They just need to perform the ritual, say those words.
The words, right. Say the words.
Except Dahlia has a hole in her throat. No problem, she plugs that hole with her own fingers and says the words. And like that, Katie is saved. This whole final act is when the movie comes alive again, i.e. when it becomes Evil Dead. That is to say, it leans into that unique blend of slapstick horror with violence that beggars the imagination. Chaos, like a brother helping rip off his sister's skin, the close-up shot of Dahlia's face while she tumbles down the stairs, followed by undead Grandma standing over her with swollen feet, and the throat scorpion. Ugh. The fact that Dahlia then has to plug her own wound to speak, that also felt very Evil Dead, putting a character through the ringer, forcing them to cross badass and gory pain thresholds. It's a lot of fun, especially after these characters have had little to do but react to their situation. To finally see physical violence unleashed is a bit cathartic. At the same time, it felt odd to me Katie could wake up and essentially just be fine. Physically, didn't she just tear a whole layer of skin off her body? Speaking of which, after that whole ritual, I expected her to look different, maybe more red. I expected blood, but you don't really see much. It doesn't feel like it really did anything. Putting the physical aspect aside, psychologically, what is it like to wake up from being a demon mummy for 8 years? Apparently, it's like waking up from a good nap. Some time passes, the family keeps Charlie in the basement, but still speak to him sometimes, knocking on his sarcophagus in Morse code, and he knocks back, telling them he loves them. If you believe Katie's translations. I mean, the mom doesn't know Morse code, so when she asks Katie, what is he saying? Maybe Katie didn't have the heart to tell her that he's begging us to put him out of his misery again. Kill me, please! He's saying, I love you. Wait, remember the tape. Any human life will do. Hey, isn't Layla's mom human? And apparently she survived the detective's gunshot earlier. So they bring Charlie to the hospital in Egypt. Would love to see how that plane ride went. And they do one more switcheroo, putting the demon in her instead. I would have bet anything that final scene was added due to test audiences not wanting to end with Charlie mummified, but according to Cronin's interview with Hollywood Reporter, that wasn't exactly the case. This comeuppance ending was always in the cards as an option, but as Cronin puts it, test screenings then gave the confidence to see it through. Personally, I like it. This isn't an emotionally complex movie that'll have you thinking about it months from now. All that matters is the experience of watching it in the moment. So I say, run hard in either direction. Go over the top dark, evil escapes, and we're all fucked. Or f*** evil. Take this demon and shove it down your throat. Rather than the middle-of-the-road option. Dad sacrifices himself, but is still around in a way. Boring. So yeah, might as well give the audience a pat on the back. You deserve a happy ending. Why not? Overall, Lee Cronin's The Mummy contains some horror treats, the sort reminiscent of his previous effort, Evil Dead Rise, but this movie is also 40 minutes longer, and most of that time is a couple of parents sleepwalking through the chaos of demonic possession, and an investigation whose payoff is the girl is possessed. I already knew that. Okay, smartass, but did you know she's possessed by the Nazmaranian? What? I'm still looking forward to whatever Cronin does next. I'm just hoping it'll be a tighter story with stronger connective tissue between the scares. And with that, I'm Gil, and you've been explained. Gotta work on my sign-off. Thanks for watching.